Hello and welcome to another diary reading video. If you're new here, if this is your first time visiting, first diary reading video, here's how it works. I read part of it publicly on YouTube and then we move on over to Buy Me a Coffee, where for $3 or $5 a month you get access to all the diary readings that I have ever done. I do this just like to keep a little privacy for these people because they are real people, and also to help fund my diary rescuing mission, because they are not cheap. And my goal is to buy them and research them, enjoy the history, learn about these people, share it, because this is history, very interesting history. We can learn a lot from these just daily lives of real people across the world, mostly America. I try to get other ones. And then I am trying to find their families so we can return this to their families. I've had some success. 4 or 5 have gotten returned. It's kind of a slow process, but I just want to make sure that I can afford to do this, because they do get expensive in some cases, and I don't want, I just can't afford to lose like thousands of dollars, because I don't make that much on YouTube, and I don't want to have to ask families to like pay me back for these diaries. I let them if they want to give something, but I also tell them that because of the Buy Me a Coffee, and then I raise a little bit each month, that kind of goes towards the cost of the diaries for when I'm able to return them. So by joining, you get access to all the diaries readings. You can sit and listen for days and learn so much about these people and history. I've learned so much history. It's great, and also just help me in my mission to get these back to their families. I am just kind of a caretaker. They're in my possession. I keep them safe. I scan them. You can also download, or you can buy the scans of them if you want to read along, or research along with me or anything like that. If you enjoy reading old handwriting, there you go. In some cases, I do transcribe them, not all the time. I would love to do that. Maybe when I have more time, ChatGPT can help me with that. But yeah, I try to preserve them by scanning them as best as I can. I don't have a professional setup here. It's just me and my Canon. But anyway, that's how it works. Please join us over there. We will welcome you with open arms. Today, I am starting on a memoir. It's not a diary, it's a memoir written by this lady. I will put her picture up here. It's a little easier to see, even though this is a very large picture. But that is Lillie Day McCollum Reddy, and she had this typed up by her daughter in 1945, right? 1944. So she was 78, I believe, when she had this typed up. And it covers all her memories up until she got married, and would have loved had she typed up more. But I found this was very interesting, and I really wanted to read that next, mostly because it's typed and that gives my eyes a rest. But there were also some really interesting stories in here about life in Victorian America. She was born in 1865, so yeah, I don't have a lot of notes about her because this isn't our usual diary. She tells her story, so I'm just going to read that. I didn't find any other pictures of her. I found out the man she married. When did she get married? Let's see. She got married to a William Reddy in, it doesn't even say, I do not have the year that they got married, actually, but I think she might mention at the end of the diary. Does she? Because that's where she ends it. No. She ends it kind of in a funny way. But, William was born in 1855, so he's 10 years older than her. And they got married in Nebraska, and then they lived in Oklahoma. And he died in Oklahoma. She's in Oklahoma, so I assume she also probably died in Oklahoma. They did have some children, and I am trying to track a living family member down so that we can return this if possible. I think anyone would be lucky to have this. But let's get started. Oh no. Well, I just realized normally when I read a diary, I have notes about like what happened in this year, so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on in the world or in the US or what might affect our author, what they're living through at this period in history. I just remembered I didn't do that, but then I remembered I don't have to because this isn't a normal diary. So it doesn't really matter what was going on in 1944 because we are going all the way back to 1865. Okay, well, what's the easiest way to do this? There's such thin pages. All right, let me take a sip of tea and then we are going to get into Memories by Lillie de McCollum Ready. All right, settle in for story time. I was born March 28th, 1865, somewhere in central Illinois. My mother, Frances Thomas McCollum, was 26 years old when I was born. My father was James Riley McCollum. As this was my father's 30th birthday, I always had a little touch of vanity about it, especially on my birthday when he would put his arms around me and say, "This is the finest birthday present I ever received." We left Illinois in a covered wagon when I was 6 weeks old, bound for the free land in Nebraska. There my father intended to take a claim. A little incident that happened the morning we started might be of interest. We passed a little neighbor boy driving his cow. After passing the time of day, the little fellow asked, "Have you named the baby yet?" Father said, "No, what shall we call her?" He said, "Call her Lillie, that's my cow's name." And Lillie I've been ever since. My brothers, later in life, used to tease me quite a lot by calling me Suki. I don't know what that means. Maybe that is a cow reference. But we did land in western Nebraska, and my father did take a claim. Our nearest neighbors being 3 miles away. The Indians were not civilized yet and were committing quite a few depredations in that country. When I was first beginning to toddle around, it must have been the following summer, my father had a lovely field of wheat. One morning just after sunrise, 3 Indians rode into the yard, jumped from their ponies and turned them loose on the wheat. One had a white woman's scalp in his belt. They were painted and befeathered and showed plainly that they were on the warpath. Father was frightened but tried to assume a brave front. He ordered them to go take their ponies out of the wheat. Their only remark as they obeyed him was, "Heap brave." I suppose maybe I should have taken notes and looked up these things because maybe I'd understand what this means. They then entered the house, ordered Mother to cook for them. They ate all that they could hold, then put the rest of the food in a bag around their necks. They seemed much attracted to my sister, just older than I. She became frightened and cried. I was too young to know the danger, so I toddled up the table and held out my hand. One of the 3 gave me a biscuit, and I went away content. My older brother Jim, who was about 6 at this time, was old enough to remember some of the Indian atrocities. As he was outside and saw the Indians before they saw him, he ran off in the wheat and stayed almost all day. The Indians then went out in the yard, examined their rifles and tomahawks and scalping knives, and had a short powwow, then got on their ponies and left. Father expected them back, but they never came. We learned later that they had slain our neighbors and had scalped the woman. Father always said in relating this incident that if ever he sent up a prayer of thanks, it was that morning. Our first crazy story. Now, before I leave the plains of Nebraska, I think of an incident my mother told of our home there. She was alone with 3 little children. Oh, this is so many stories. And if I remember correctly, just before another was born. We had a house and a barn and a cow lot. Mother went out one morning and looked around and saw a glow in the sky that could mean only one thing in that prairie country. Yes, a prairie fire, and our house in a direct path. She knew it was a long way off, but she also knew that it would travel very fast. Instantly she made up her mind. She got the horse out and hitched him to the plow, and plowed around and around the barn, cow lot, and house, until the flames could be seen in the distance. She then began to backfire, and when the flames came, they passed us by and all were saved. She immediately entered the house, threw herself on the bed, and fainted dead away. The sun has gone behind a cloud. The children thought she was sleeping, and when she came to, she was almost drowned. The oldest boy, Jim, was pouring water on her by the dipperful. She asked why he did that, and he said, "That's what Pa does when I won't wake up." You can imagine Father's rejoicing next day when he returned and found his home and family safe. My first recollection as a child is when I was about 5 years old. When the rest of the children were getting ready to go to school, like most young children, I felt I was being badly treated. Mother thought the distance was much too great for me. We were then living on a large farm with a lovely 2-story house 2 miles from the school in Atchison County, Missouri. In order to soothe my feelings, she promised to teach me to knit. That pleased me very much, as I was always anxious to sew or do any handwork, young as I was. True to her promise, Mother took me between her knees later that day and taught me how to knit a garter. I made them by dozens that winter. It didn't bother me a lot if some of them were twice as wide in places as others. I learned to knit my own hose while very young, and was very proud of my accomplishment. One incident that happened at this home is very amusing to me, as I think back. My mother had dyed some carpet rags. Among them was an old white blanket worn very thin. This she dyed a beautiful canary yellow. To my mind it was very beautiful and seemed to have a wonderful attraction. Not long after this, Father and Mother went to town to do some trading, and to spend part of the day at my grandfather's, my mother's father, Thomas. They left us 3 older children at home, and after finishing the tasks we were given, we each found our own amusement. I immediately got thread, needle, and scissors, and made for the room upstairs where Mother kept her carpet rags. I worked diligently all day, making me a dress out of the yellow blanket. I had some trouble attaching the gathered skirt to the belt on the waist, but I finally accomplished this too. Anyway, when Mother and Father got back that evening, I met them in the yard with my dress on. Mother didn't seem much surprised, but said, "I may have to take a few extra stitches in it." Later that evening, Brother caught me by the skirt. With a little jerk, the skirt and waist separated, and I was heartbroken. So Mother got her carpet rags back. This was before I was old enough to start school. That fall, I started to school, and the only thing I remember about it is the road was very long and very muddy, and the mud was very sticky. There were mud holes very hard to get around. Anyway, it was hard for a little girl her first year in school. This will make you understand how I dreaded those mud holes. One day I got stuck in one, and a boy that was in the crowd, he was 10 years older than I, pulled me out. As he was pulling me out of the mud, pop went some of my buttons, and some of my clothing was left in the mud. The most humorous thing about it was that later in life, this young man and I kept company for more than a year. His name was Ransom Bushen. He was the only child of wealthy parents. This same year, a Mrs. Fraser, who lived on this road, would come out and call us in as we passed going home from school, and give us a drink of cold milk or cookies, and ask us to sit in the shade a while. I thought she was the grandest person ever. I don't remember the teacher or the schoolhouse, but I remember Mrs. Fraser. At this home, my brother Jim, who was 4 years older than I, was digging potatoes one day, and I was picking them up for him. He struck me in the head with the corner of the hoe, and I have the scar from that accident yet. When I was about 8 years old, Father sold this place and bought a home in Scott City, Missouri, on the banks of the Missouri River. This was a little white cottage. This was a little white cottage with a picket fence around it, and the most beautiful bluegrass yard I ever saw. Oh, it was grand. Instead of a gate, we had a sty, 4 steps up and a platform, and 4 steps down. I think this was so that the ladies in their lovely long riding skirts could just get up on the sty and sit right into the saddle, and I thought, oh, if I could ever have one of those long skirts, I would be so happy. My father owned a store here, and do you know, you could buy everything from a toothpick to a harness. He had everything, even the post office, I think. Another blessed event was the birth of my brother, Gool. It looks like Gool, and I could probably double check on Ancestry for that. Now there were 6 of us, Jim and Mary, older than I, and Fanny, Nathan, and Gool, younger. Our schoolhouse was about a half-mile east of our house, really out in the country. Here was where all meetings were held. One night, Jim, Mary, and I attended our first puppet show. I don't remember anything they had that night, but the Babes in the Woods. It seemed so realistic. I cried all the way home. That didn't matter to my sister and brother. They called me crybaby often. To me, a story that didn't make me cry wasn't good at all. Another thing I remember was that behind the schoolhouse was a farm home. Here's where we got our drinking water. Sanitation wasn't practiced then, for we brought in a bucket of water with a dipper in it, and this was passed to the entire school. Each took a drink out of the same dipper. Since then we have come a long way. Another thing they had at this farm home was a sorghum mill, and each fall we were treated to a bucket of sorghum to make candy, and so we went in our happy, sticky way. I had to look up what sorghum was, and it's a gluten-free grain, cultivated for its grain syrup and as a plant-based animal feed. So, I guess they use that to make candy. Maybe I'll try to find a recipe, and, well, I don't know if I can find sorghum, but maybe. My father owned a lot of property in this town. Mr. Moore was his partner in all these deals and was the means of breaking him up some years later. As a child, I don't remember the circumstances, but do remember my father crying like a child when he learned of his treachery. He would repeat over and over again, I trusted him as I would my brother. My father never seemed the same man again. He traveled almost all the next year, seeking a new location and a new start. Now I want you to see Scott City through a child's eyes. Indeed, this little town meant more to me as a child than anywhere we ever lived. How it got its high and mighty name I never knew. It was anything but a city. The main street was not more than 2 blocks long. Outhouse was on the south end of Main. My father's store was next to it, and then south of it the hotel. The hotel and store being the only brick buildings in town. At the north end was a saloon, a barber shop, a shoemaker's shop, and I don't recall any others. That was all on East Main and faced the Missouri River, which was not more than 3 blocks away. On the north end of Main was a livery barn, quite large, and a blacksmith shop. There were not more than 400 or 500 people in the town. My father owned an interest in the hotel, flour mill, and elevator, the store and the livery barn, which was always filled with fine horses and rigs. We boasted a stagecoach. I wish I could describe it to you. It was about as long as a wagon, and I think had wagon wheels. It was built rather high and painted white with glass windows all around. I have seen some in the Western plays that reminded me of it. The driver sat on a high seat in front. You entered from the back, 1 step up and then inside. The seats ran lengthwise along the sides. They were upholstered in brown leather, and as a child I thought they were very uncomfortable. This stagecoach always drove 4 horses, and with a great flourish drove up to the post office twice a day. It drove to Phelps City, the nearest railroad station. I don't know who this stagecoach belonged to, but it was kept in the livery barn when not in use. It carried both mail and passengers. Phelps City was 1 mile north and 3 or 4 miles east, and the coach passed Grandfather's house every trip, so I often rode in it shopping. At Grandfather's, as there was nothing intervening between us and the river, we could always see the big steamers. They were called stern wheels. The river was 1 mile wide here, and Brownville, Nebraska was straight across the river. They had a ferry boat, and it made hourly trips across. As the landing was straight west from our house, we often watched them load and unload. This boat had 3 decks. The first looked very much like a bridge built around a house. It had a strong outside fence. I have often counted 5 and 6 covered wagons driving off the boat. I have also seen quite large droves of cattle come off. The boat had a second balcony where passengers stayed and quite a nice restroom when the weather was bad. I was allowed once or twice to go up to the 3rd floor where the pilot house was. I loved to watch the pilot turn the wheel and really thought that was what made the boat go. In winter we didn't need a boat as the river froze over and the ice was often 2 feet thick. Here was our ice supply for the following summer. The men sawed it out in great squares, hauled it to the ice house and put it up in sawdust. This sawdust was a great trial to me. It was so hard to get off, and Mother would send me back to the well time and again to get all the sawdust off. While I am at the Missouri River, I want to say something about it. It may be that I will return to it later in this narrative. The river runs straight north and south past Scott City some miles. I don't know the distance, but do know that there was a bend in the river northeast which was some distance around this promontory of land. And then she scratched some of it out. She scratched out some of the richest farms lay in this bend. I will... Oh, well, she just puts it on this page instead for some reason. Some of the richest farms lay in this bend. I will tell you more about this later. I think it was the winter I was 8 years old that a large frame building was erected in the north part of town. This was used for a community building. Our school was also transferred to this building as it was in town. We didn't have closing exercises as now. We had exhibitions to exhibit our knowledge, I suppose. Only one thing stands out clearly in my mind about the exhibition at the close of school this year. My brother Jim was quite the singer, and he was given a song representing a Negro shoemaker. It got through very nicely, and his act made a big hit. By the time he learned the song, which he acted out, I knew it too. As I could sing as soon as I could talk, I was kept very busy by the neighbors and friends giving the shoemaker song. One Sunday afternoon at my grandfather's, Uncle Sam Thomas, my mother's brother, silently got all the folks in the sitting room, and it was full. "Now, Lillie, we want the shoemaker song," he said. I was a little embarrassed and hesitated. He said, "Sing it and I will give you a quarter." I thought, 5 nickels! I never had more than one at a time in my life. I bravely went through with it, fully expecting my quarter. That debt was never paid. Don't think a child forgets. I probably would have hounded that uncle for a while. It's terrible. Here is the old shoemaker's song as I remember it, and that is more than 70 years ago. I'm an old shoemaker by my trade. I lately came a freeman. I can handle a peg and awl, stitch 'em fast and peg 'em tight, and they will wear forever. The chorus. Fal-de-rah, da-diddly-day, fal-de-rah, do-doll, fal-de-ral, da-diddly, da-diddle-day. Kate, you are my darling. This is enough to give you an idea of the number. The last of this grand composition ended with the admonition, if Kate should die tomorrow night, I'd marry Katie's mammy. I suppose it was quite amusing for a child of my age to sing and act out this song. Anyway, they seemed to get a great kick out of it. Our home was about the ordinary. We had 3 hot meals a day, and every child that could sit at the table had to be up and dressed with a washed face ready for breakfast. We had an old-fashioned cradle, something like the baby beds of today, but not so large and with rockers. It seemed to me I never wanted to do anything special, but what I had to rock the cradle. Why the baby's brains were not rocked loose and churned to mush, I don't know. Sometimes I would get angry and rock the cradle just as hard as I could without turning it over. Then I would hear Mother, "Lillie, what are you doing?" Again I would rock it very gently until I thought the baby was asleep, stopping very slowly, and then I would try to slip away. Just about the time I thought I was free, the baby would give a yelp, and back I had to go to try it all over again. The times I succeeded in getting away were the exception and not the rule. I'm going to stop there for today. This is kind of a shorter reading because I want to make this last a couple readings, at least 2 more, because I need to cover our time. We are heading to France to look for a home. We're going to be in an Airbnb for a little while, and I just want to have a couple diary readings set up and ready to go while we're there in case I'm not able to sit down and do readings for any reason. But we're going to stop there, and I will continue on later. She is going to tell us about an Indian experience next. So if you want to hear more of Lillie's adventures in Victorian America, I guess you'd call it, please join me over on Buy Me a Coffee, where I will continue reading. And there are so many other diary readings over there too. It's a treasure trove. So that's it for today. Hope to see you next week, and have a lovely weekend. Bye.